Brian Casel went from spending weeks on features to pressing go at 5 p.m. and having them built by morning. Today, he's sharing with us Agent OS, the exact system he uses to make Cloud Code actually productive instead of just impressive. It's easy these days to write prompts with Claude and to have it make you code. You've done it, I've done it, but it is so hard to get agents to build complete features without consistent handholding and correction. Now, there doesn't really exist on YouTube like showcases of developer workflows that aren't just prompting tricks, but how to really structure an entire development process around AI agents. And today, with Brian Casel, we deep dive into how AI agents from the Agent OS transform the way you build software, managing context windows, orchestrating sub-agents. What does a real AI-powered workflow look like day to day? No gatekeeping, all practical insights, and if you stick around to the end of this episode, I think you're going to walk away with a completely new approach to building software. To be honest, these kind of episodes, persons and consultants are charging 10, 15, 20 grand for workshops, but this is absolutely free. I hope this really gets you guys creative juices flowing and you start to ship features while you sleep with some of these workflows. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with Brian Caswell, cracked Claude Code developer, amazing YouTuber, and developer extraordinaire. He's here to talk to us more about how he's leveraging Claude Code to increase his productivity in his workflows. Brian, thank you so much for coming down, man. And tell us, what can persons learn by the end of this episode?
Hey, Jonathan. Yeah, thanks for the invite. I'm really just happy to talk about what I'm seeing in my workflow and in our industry in general. I feel like I'm still new to this stuff, just like everyone else. I think that's what's most exciting about what's happening in software. I've been building software products for the last 15, 20 years, and just in the last 12 months with Claude Code and Cursor and and LLMs in general, it's like everything is changing and it's all moving so fast. So it's pretty exciting.
I want to know, so you've been developing for, more than a decade now. How is it so different from back then till now? Tell me, what's the...
Oh man, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've just never seen things change so fast like they're changing right now. I started as a more on the design side and front end development, HTML, CSS. I used to do a lot with WordPress and stuff. And then I learned full stack Ruby on Rails based stacks. I made that transition from front end to full stack development probably around 2017, 2018. Before that, I was hiring people to help with backend. And then since then, I do a lot of it myself. I still work with some teams. But when I was learning Ruby on Rails and trying to learn how to build applications myself, this was around 2018. There was no AI, right? So I was going through hours and hours. I literally spent a whole year just going through courses and videos and books and hiring coaches and trying to learn. And just one small thing, like a user authentication flow. If I had never built that before, it would take me probably 3 or 4 weeks of Googling and going on Stack Overflow and trying to figure out how to make it work. And that kind of thing now takes 10 minutes. I mean, it's unbelievable.
For persons who are listening in and they may not understand the terminology, full stack, front end, back end, could you give them just a quick 5-second overview of what those are?
Yeah, sure. So I think of full stack. The meaning to me is I'm able to design and code and code the front end, meaning what you see in the browser, which is largely HTML and CSS. Some people consider JavaScript to be part of the front end. And then there's the back end. That's everything that touches the database. So if you are a full stack developer, you're able to build an application, something that users can sign up for and log in and have accounts and do things. Whereas before, and for many years, before I was able to build a full application, I considered myself to be more of a web designer, where which is really more designing and front end. So I could create websites, I could design HTML and CSS, but I couldn't really build anything that interacted with a database. And so until later in my career, and that's one of my regrets. I wish I had learned back end and full stack earlier in my career.
Really? So,
But and now it's like easier than ever if you're learning. I still think like courses and boot camps and YouTube videos and stuff like that is helpful. But it used to be I would go on to Google or like Stack Overflow to find answers to my roadblocks. And now you can just go to Claude or ChatGPT
and get an answer.
It's just say like, explain this to me. What does that code mean?
Yeah. That's actually a lot of what's been happening for myself as well. Like the other day, I was just like, yeah, I want to do Rust now. And I just opened up Claude 4 and I was like, what is a primitive in Rust? And it just spat out an answer and it gave me code examples. And I was able to iteratively go back and forth with that Rust programming language and just understand, like, oh, I know what a crate is. It's crazy, man. Like,
it's unbelievable.
You mentioned something earlier, which I want to touch on really quickly, is that you spoke about wishing the regret that you didn't have you didn't do like backend first. Would you say that, like, new person coming in, would you recommend them to start with backend first?
Well, I think really you should just start which whatever area you're most curious about and you feel like you're most interested in learning. Like the starting point doesn't really matter. For me, like I just was naturally more of a designer, more of a visual person. So I started out, and I'm still that way. I like everything I build today is still design and UI and UX first, and then I sort of think through the back end implementation. But I do think that it is a benefit, and you probably should think about it as a full like you should learn all parts of the stack. And I think the mistake that I made early on was that like I identified as a visual designer and I had some technical skill. I could do HTML and CSS and a little bit of like WordPress stuff, but I felt like I'm not smart enough or skilled enough as a programmer to do backend kind of stuff. Like I think today it's all mixed together more than ever. It used to be much more separated, right? Like it used to be like designers never even do HTML. It used to be you only work in Figma or back then it was like Photoshop. Now it's like if you design anything for the web or for applications software, like you do need to understand how to design and how to make it work, and you can today with AI, with tools, and even not using AI, just the tooling of like the frameworks out there, whether it's Laravel or Ruby on Rails or React. Like those things are much easier and put together today than it used to be all broken up.
Yeah, definitely. I really attest to that, because even now, like for myself, when I'm developing like applications, I'll be frank, I'm coming from a large backend. Like I've only ever done Python like my entire like career for the last 5 or so years, and I just go to V0 now, and I'm just like, hey, I want a front end.
Yeah,
it spins it up. And the beauty about V0 and like a lot of those like web IDE vibe coding platforms is that you can also give them your backend infrastructure. Like you can say, here's how the requests look like, and it'll implement it for you. So a lot of the times I find myself just going on V0 and creating these beautiful front ends, and then just having like an N8N or just a Python endpoint that it calls to all the time, and it just works like out the box. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. A funny thing I find is that like whichever area of the stack you are like an expert in, I'm finding it's more difficult to lean on AI for those things. Because like I don't know about you, like for me, I'm a little bit more of I'm much more designer and front end focused. So I'm more of a perfectionist when it comes to how the design and the UI and the Tailwind CSS is implemented and stuff. Like I have my very specific opinions about that. And so I do use AI and Claude Code and stuff for that, and I'm still trying to figure out the right workflow. But I find myself spending a lot more time hand coding or hand fixing that, whereas I'll let it build large parts of the back end. I still review and I still give input and direction on that, but it's like it's much easier for me to offload the back end to Claude Code than it is the front end. And like, yeah, tools like V0 are great, especially if you build like React based stuff or like Next.js stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it has been phenomenal in terms of just like the iterative process to get like something developed and up and running like really fast. Like prototyping has never been quicker for me. In terms of how I used to be like, kind of helicoptering like a lot over the AI models, but having been using Cursor and now transitioning slowly to Cloud Code, I've kind of just moved back a little bit and allow it to cook in a sense, right?
yep,
Where I have very specific requirements that I want to be developed for my endpoints. I want them to be done a specific way using a specific framework, right? And I want them to look a specific way because that's what I'm used to. So what I know and that is what I've done before at like a previous job, right? So I'm a stickler for that. So what I do now, I find myself is like giving very, very like almost eerily long like PRDs like and
mm-hmm.
development, what you'd almost say like specifications to the cloud model, and then letting
Yep,
it just let it rip. And then I then pull
is the way.
down the branch and being like, okay, it sucked in this department. Let's figure out. Then I review it. So I've become more of a reviewer rather than
Yep.
like, so the perfectionism I used to like manually coding still, but now it's like I just kind of let it do its thing, and then I pull, and then I just say okay, then using not the same instance of Cloud Code, I'll spin up a new one and be like, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
what we're working with, this is what we're doing, and then we go from there.
Yeah, the like the spec-driven development
Yeah.
PRDs,
Wow.
that is definitely the way. I'm building this agent OS system,
Yeah.
which is like built around that whole concept. And you're right, like I'm finding most of my actual time now, like most of my hours are spent writing specs
Yeah.
for AI.
Yeah.
Um, and like even like a single feature, I'll spend about an hour or two just dialing in all the specs and the instructions. And sometimes I use Agent OS for that. Sometimes I'll just draft it in a text file. Sometimes I'll draft it in Claude, like the web app, and go back and forth there, and then finalize and get a markdown, and then drop that into Claude Code, or drop it into Agent OS and build out a whole spec flow, and then I'll press go, and then I'll go out and
And
hang out with my kids or
get a
something.
coffee, you know.
Exactly, or come back the next morning, and
Man,
it's basically built.
oh my goodness, man! Yesterday was the first time since I started developing. I'm a bit new to the market, right? I started developing like work wise like 5 years ago, and yesterday was the first time in 5 years I got up and I left my code to run itself. I was like, wow, wow, wow,
It's
wow.
incredible.
It was a surreal moment because I was kind of the married to my code kind of guy. Like I was like, oh,
I know it, man. I've been there.
oh man,
I am there.
yeah.
It's funny. I like every day.
Mhm.
I try to pack in as much work in my work day every day. I try to make these hours count. If I'm sitting here in my office, like I've got to ship stuff, whether it's products or like a new video for YouTube or whatever it might be. And I used to struggle a lot with like finishing my workday. Like I've got too much on my to-do list, and my family's having dinner. I got to get out of here, or it's the weekend. I've got things to do. I can't just be in here all the time. Can't pull the late nights. But now I'm able to like do my workday and then prepare a big spec around 5 p.m., 5:30, 6 p.m. And then I press go on that, and then I finish my day. and then it's like, oh, like are you done for the day? I'm like, yeah, I'm done, but Claude's still working. I'm
Yeah,
I'm done.
I'm. There's no better feeling than saying I'm done for the day, man. Like I'm loving it.
Yep.
Before you had mentioned Agent OS, I want us to let's talk about Agent OS because I must say that I've stolen all of your agents. Thank you. And I've started using them for myself. So let's break down Agent OS, man. You could share your screen and just take us through like what you've built here with Agent OS.
All right. So yeah, this is Agent OS. And I'll open up the GitHub as well. So, I mean, basically it's, and I've got a couple different YouTube videos on this. The most recent one goes through the recent version. It essentially gives your, it's really best used with Claude Code, but you could use it with Cursor, and you can adapt it to any other system. But basically you can set up your standards for like the way that you build things. And I have some like some little graphics to show this. So it's like this 3-layered context system, right? The base layer is your standards. That's like how we build things. So that can include your tech stack, your code style, like how you prefer to do things, some best practices. And then once you get into an individual product, like a code base, Agent OS has processes for like pulling from your standards and then building out your mission and roadmap. And then you get into actual specs. So you're ready to build the next big feature. You can sort of use Agent OS to develop a big spec. And here, let me see if I can open up.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you could like showcase as well, like how you're leveraging Agent OS as well.
Yeah, so here's a product that I'm like midway through building. It's called Newsletter Lab. It's like an AI tool to help me create and build my weekly newsletter. So I'm looking at the at the code base for this project, and inside the code base, I have this Agent OS folder.
Oh, could you zoom in on the screen a little bit? Could you just make the screen a bit larger for us so we could see? Perfect.
All right, so inside this Agent OS folder, which gets installed into the project, I've got instructions. And these are like the core instructions. So every time I create a spec, it's gonna you can see that. It has these very detailed kind of step-by-step instructions on how to create a spec. And then we have instructions on executing the tasks. So that's like the instructions, but then ultimately it ends up creating these specs. And each of these are like individual features that I was building. So for example, when I built setting up the actual like newsletter sections, like designing out the sections of a newsletter, inside that I've got the actual spec. So it created like a overview, some user stories, some scope, like what's included, what's going to be out of scope. And then it broke that down even further into like, these are some of the database changes that are going to need to be made. This is some technical like instructions on how to implement stuff, some test coverage instructions. And then ultimately, based on all of that, it'll create this actual task list. And it breaks it down, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it takes like sort of a test-driven development approach here, breaks it down into subtasks. This time it actually didn't X these off, but it did end up building it.
That's it.
And then so basically once I have this spec built out, which Agent OS like helped me create this spec, then I run the execute tasks command, which goes through and builds those out, and there's a bunch of steps that it follows for that. I'm actually like right now I'm actually in the middle of building out Agent OS 2.0, which is taking a very different approach. It's going to be leaning on sub agents a lot more. So and this is like a half finished thing that you're looking at here, but I'm so I have like these different sub agents in here for writing specs. I didn't finish building it out here. I didn't really prepare for this video, but yeah, so like basically like the new, so I think the new approach that I'm taking with Agent OS is like every task that I have it do is going to a sub agent, and the main agent, like the chat interface that you have with Claude Code, think of that as like your main orchestrator agent. And so I'm gonna say like, okay, we're gonna create a spec. So go ahead and delegate to the spec writer sub agent to create that spec. Now it's time to start building. First, delegate to the front end developer sub agent and have it build out that. And then when that's finished, delegate to the backend developer sub agent. So everything is going to be so like the main coordinator agent or orchestrator agent will send out to these sub agents. There's a bunch of benefits to that. Each individual sub agent like gets their own context, which not only saves on the context window, so you don't run out of the size, but also it's like each individual agent has a fresh context. Like they're not getting confused with all the stuff that came before it. They're just being given their specific set of instructions for this part of the task. And I'm finding that makes it much more reliable. And so instead of building out the step-by-step instructions in these other markdown files, I'm building them right into the sub agents themselves. So when it's a front-end developer sub agent, that has its own instructions built into it. You know?
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. It definitely offloads a lot of that context. We've been saying the word context, and I'd love for you to define like context window for those of us who may be listening and don't understand.
Yeah, there context works on a few different levels, right? One is the context window in terms of size. So Claude Code, I think on Opus at least, it's like a 200,000 token limit.
Yeah.
So once you reach that, it's going to automatically compact and mostly lose everything else that was said before it. And there are ways to bring certain details along. And that context includes all of your instructions, all the background info, and all the code and work that it does. That's all eating up tokens, right? Yeah. But if as part of that conversation you're delegating to sub agents, then each individual sub agent gets their own fresh 200K context. Yeah. So that's how you can start to expand that size. The other way to think about context is like what's the content in it, like. I think of context as like Claude Code's short-term memory.
Yeah.
Like what did we just talk about is in the context. But it does a work as you fill up. See, this is what I'm starting to really learn about the context right now is that like the more that you fill up into it, they're not that great at remembering. Well, like even if it's in the context, even if we spoke about this thing, once you get close to that 200,000 token limit, like it's not going to remember all the details that you talked about, you know? And that's where that's why they call it context engineering, is like figuring out how can we make these things actually be reliable and know the exact specific bits of information that we want it to remember.
Yeah, because agents thrive in like very specific single use cases. What I found in my experience as well.
Yeah,
the word context rot gets thrown around a lot.
Yep.
So for those of you who may not know, context rot is the idea or the theory that's been proposed. Not even theory, but it's been proven that as you get closer to the 200K, as Brian and I have been discussing, it's like the agent just starts forgetting, it starts hallucinating, meaning it starts creating more things that you didn't talk about, you know, and it gets worse in terms of overall output of performance that it may have as well. And also the word token defines like 2 to 3 words within within like a sentence, for those of you who may not know. So yeah, so
also like I don't even know that it's like necessarily that it's forgetting things, or that I think it's more like there's so much information in the context that the LLM is going to take the wrong cue and it's going to try, and it's going to focus on the wrong bits, and it's going to consider that its current instruction. Like that's the thing. Like I almost think of it like a dog or something. like it just wants to like it just wants to like do good by its, you know.
I'm a good
What I mean
boy.
is like, like one thing that I'm starting to really learn is that like the first time it sees a direct instruction, like create this report, and then after that, if you give it all these extra bits of information, but don't do this and do include that and do this and then do that, it's going to focus on like, okay, I'm tasked with creating a report, so no matter what I do, I need to create this report because that's the first directive that I was given, you know. um and so it's always going to be sort of like optimizing for like completing the task at hand. And if you have like 20, 50 different things that could be interpreted as directions, it's hard to know which one it's going to pick up and say like, that's my current task, you know.
Yeah, which is where context engineering comes in. So could you just break that down for us, like what context engineering entails and how do LLMs benefit? In my personal experience, I found that after like 10 or five, not even 10, like seven or so prompts, I kind of just new window, man. I do like new
Mm-hmm.
cursor tab because after that initial prompt, you can very visibly see just the decline. Like after a
Yeah.
while, it's crazy. But yeah, context engineering.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to go about it with context engineering, and I feel like right now we're in this time where we're all just figuring out like figuring out what is the best practice, what is the flow. Um, I'm currently very focused on engineering around sub agents, and I'm finding that that is a way to have more control over exactly what we're giving the agent. Like we're just talking about, it, when that context window gets really filled up, it gets confused, it picks up the wrong pieces of information. When you delegate to a sub agent, like that is your chance to say like, you are only doing this task. These are your instructions. This is only what you need to know. You don't even need to know about anything else. And that's how it works, right? Like the sub agent is completely isolated from the rest of the context. It's only given what it's given. um and so that's one way. And the benefit of that also is that like you don't need to leave the main conversation. um you can just have the sub agent do its task and then come back, and then it the sub agent basically reports back to the orchestrator agent. And then you can sort of continue on with like the big feature build that you're currently working on. But then the other problem that arises from that is that since the sub agent is in its own context, um, there isn't a built-in way for it to fully pass its work off like onto the next agent. It can sort of just report back to the orchestrator like, I'm done. um, so what I'm starting to do like in agent OS is like when a sub agent does its job, when it's finished, it's going to create a recap markdown file in your code base. And then you can use that to pass along to the next agent. And that's a way to sort of transfer at least part, like the important parts of a context from one agent to the next. But that's also helpful. Like I go back and forth between Claude Code and Cursor a lot. So I'll have Claude Code build a big feature, and then I'll go into Cursor's AI chat to like do quick fixes and like, you know, just fix here and
Right.
there. And so you can sort of transfer between them with these markdown files.
And with that recap that you're talking about, are you able to d- through that? Are you able to do like dependency management? Like for instance, if one task relies on another.
Yeah, that's usually where I go into the like the overall process, right? So in the new version of Agent OS, the process starts with like uh, create spec, and then out of that it's like execute tasks. Or actually, sorry, now we're breaking that out into multiple phases, right? So like execute front end, and then execute back end, and then execute testing, and there's a UI and UX phase in there. Um, so all of that is sort of planned out from the beginning, like spending all that time up front on the spec and the task list. Like that's when you start to decide like, how are we going to orchestrate the design and build of this big feature. That's when we decide like, okay, task 2 should come before task 4.
Mm.
Um, because that's ultimately how we're going to delegate it to the agents,
Mm.
you know.
So do you have like 10 agents running at once? Do you find out like do you have that kind of crazy workflow going on right now
I
with a sub agent?
I'm more linear. Like
Linear,
I'm
okay,
more
okay.
like I have played around with like work trees and do and sort of multitasking. I have a video on that on the channel, but I find I don't actually do work trees very often.
Hmm.
I because I just prefer to work on one big feature. Actually, my multitasking looks more like this. Like I'll have it up while Claude Code is building the feature, I'm planning the next feature.
Right.
You know, so like, and I spend a lot of time in planning, and that planning usually happens outside of Claude Code. So Claude Web App or a text file or something like that. Um, I'll spend hours planning something while it's spending an hour or so building the big feature, and then I'll come back and make some tweaks and finalize that, and so that's usually how my flow works now. Is like my multitasking is like Claude's building while I'm planning. You
Yeah.
know,
No, that's actually good. I need to start doing that because these days I just watch videos on the side. I have to confess.
I
Like,
do that too.
yeah, I have to confess. Like, a lot of the
Yeah.
times, like when Claude is doing his thing, I'm like, ah, yes, it's time just to sit back for the first time. Just let it.
It's crazy, man. I'm
Mhm.
really starting to do the same. Like just yesterday, I was
Yeah.
middle of my day. I was like, it's building a thing. I'm just gonna go play basketball for 30 minutes.
Yes.
You know, like I just need a break, and
Yeah.
it's like I was still being productive. The
Yeah.
thing was building. You
Wow.
know.
Yeah. Do you think with this new system that's coming up, right, with the younger generation, like how do you think it's going to affect them? Because I had someone else previously on the podcast. His name is Joel D, another crack developer, and I was asking him for instance, do you even think a degree is necessary at this point? You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Um, well, I'm someone who does not have a degree in computer in like
Yeah.
no computer science,
Hmm.
none of that. Like my degree was in like music production, which I don't do for a living. Um,
That's some
so
lore.
I even before AI,
Yeah.
I come from the school of like I don't think a degree is really necessary in this industry in general. Maybe some big companies require it, but like I've been hiring people for years in my companies, and I never once looked at the person's degree. Like it's just not a factor that's ever been important to me. I'm much more important. I'm much more interested in like how you communicate, and are you reliable? Do you are Obviously there has to be like some skill and talent built in, but um that's what's most important I think in this industry. Obviously other industries require credentials, but I don't think it's I think learning in this industry is more about learn what you need to learn in order to be able to build what you need to build. It's don't learn so that you can have a piece of paper, a certificate that you can put on your wall. Like that doesn't matter in this world, you
Mm.
know.
Nice.
Um,
That's so interesting.
that's my take on
I
it.
share a different sentiment where I think that that first degree really helps because it got my mind into a much more because I learn on like structure. I like that structured learning, so it works for me, right? So recommend persons to at least get like a first degree, and also the things that with university, what the benefit I drew from it was definitely the network. Yeah, like
Yes,
yeah,
yeah. I was gonna say there are all sorts of when you're young, going into like college, university, those years in your life, like there are definitely life lessons that you sort of need to start to learn, and networking benefits. You can get networking benefits in other ways too, like attending conferences and joining groups, joining communities and things like that. But um, yeah, like there's lots of benefit to it, but it's not. But in what we do is like in the software design development industry, it's not like being a doctor or a lawyer where you have to have a master's degree. It's not like there's that gatekeeper like other industries have.
mm,
I would actually say most of the people that I know in this industry don't have a degree related to programming or computer
wow,
science or anything like that. Like most people came from some other background, and they learned by building, they learned by joining companies, you know. Even me, like I got my first job after college. So I started working in the, you know, I've got more gray hairs here than you guys do. But my first job was around 2006, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for a web agency in New York City. I was a couple years out of college, and I learned how to build stuff on the internet by building websites for clients at this agency. You know, I didn't learn it in a classroom, you know. And the other piece of advice, I don't care how old you are, like younger, older, doesn't matter. Just build stuff, and don't, like, obviously we all want to make money. We want to grow a business, or we want to have a thriving career in this industry, of course. But the more that you can invest in building stuff of your own, like even you doing this podcast right now, or this YouTube channel, like you're not getting paid directly for this, right? But this is a project that's going to bring so much value. You're getting value just out of the content, out of like being here. B, it's like a piece of something that lives on the internet that somebody can find you and network with you and follow you. Same, like if you build a free tool, or if you release a book or release a video, like you're doing something. You're putting yourself out there. You're putting your work out there, and that's what people care about. People follow people who do interesting work. They don't follow people who just say that they're smart.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to. It's about what you do and what you build. You know.
Yeah, man, I love that last part. Thank you, because it's funny because my mom listens to this, and sometimes I encourage her to code. So I'm glad. I'm gonna snip this part and just send it to her. Like, Mom, it's time. Lock in with me.
There you go. Anyone.
So,
yeah.
Anyone. Yeah. And I think now, with the code being democratized, right? Like there's the Lovables, there's the Bolts, there's this new one came up on the block. I'm not sure if it's how new it is, by the way, called Rocket. You can create apps with Superbase baked in. It's crazy. Like there has never been such a beautiful moment than now. Just try, even if you don't understand, just try, because you may never know. Because I'm pretty sure. I can say this without a doubt. I know everybody has like some insane app idea there, but it's like, it takes so much development time. Bolt.use $20 a month.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Even if, I mean, you're right. Like you don't even need the most advanced models. Like the $20 a month subscription for Bolt or ChatGPT or any of these is fine. But even if you're on like Claude with like Opus, $100 a month, $200 a month. I mean, like I've spent years spending thousands on hiring developers to build out my software companies. And I still do work with a small team, a much smaller team now. Like I have 2 or 3 developers. I used to have like, 6 or 7. But and I still think that there is definitely a benefit to working with a team and being able to delegate projects and features to other people. But yeah, I mean, the cost is unbelievable. Like,
it's astronomically, unbelievably low right now.
Yeah.
How has your team been affected by the advent of like all these new like workflows and stuff? Are your teammates required to use Agent OS? That's so interesting. So like all of them like have the same, workflow.
Agent OS is still super new. It's only like 2 months in. So I haven't actually asked so like I have a couple different projects going on, like outside of what you see on my YouTube channel, right? So I have a SaaS product called Clarity Flow, which I've been running since 2020. I have a full-time developer working on that. And that tool, that app started before AI started. So we sort of have our legacy code base and our ways of doing things. My developer does use Cursor, and it helps with the workflow of building new features there. But yeah, and I also from time to time I work with clients on building MVP apps for them, and I've got a developer who helps me with that. So we do use like Cursor and Claude Code to help speed up our stuff, but we're still hand building apps start to finish. But my personal work day to day now, like this newsletter lab thing that I'm working on, everything that I'm working on at Builder Methods, everything I'm showing on the YouTube channel, like I am personally using Agent OS and everything and going forward. And like what I'm doing on the YouTube channel and Builder Methods, I'm starting to do some workshops and launching a membership there soon for builders who want to come together and work on this stuff. Like what I'm most interested in is like how are our workflows changing?
Yes.
Like we talked about, like Claude is building over here. Now I'm planning the next feature over here. We're doing specs. We're using different tools. We're experimenting with different context engineering. Like it's all the way we build stuff is completely different. So I'm really focused on like anything new that I'm building the new way with the new workflows and just figuring out what's the most efficient way to do it.
I've been locked in on trying to figure out like how can I have like a swarm just going at it. Like that's my thing. Another thing that I'm realizing is just how this man, like, without the $200 cloud plan, you hit usage limits very quickly. Like right now, like
Yeah,
like I'm gonna have to upgrade. Like, but before this month is out, like
yeah, and I feel like it's getting it. They definitely are ratcheting it down. Like they're
for sure.
I mean, the same plan is they're giving you less and less.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like as great as Claude Code is, and I feel like it's the best one for coding. There's going to be a reckoning soon. I think
DeepSeek kind of.
Well, yeah, or like even Codex, like OpenAI, what they're doing with it, with like GPT-5 is, in my experience, it's been pretty good at executing tasks, and I know that they're starting to make Codex like a real competitor, and then Gemini, like Google's Gemini, like those two players alone, OpenAI and Google Gemini, I don't use them nearly as much as I use Claude Code still. But they're going to make, like, we can't count them out. Like Google, especially, they're so huge and so well established, and they're able to offer their models with like million token windows, and same thing with OpenAI. Like they're just being really aggressive at giving you like these huge context windows that it'll make it hard. They're putting pressure on Anthropic to compete.
No, definitely, because like earlier last month, Anthropic dropped the 1 million context window.
Yeah,
for
for
example.
Sonnet, I think. Yeah.
And then I don't count Google out for sure, because I mean, look at their recent launch with their Nano Banana, right? The new image model. I really want to go on that. I want to like just take like a weekend and just be like, what can this thing really do?
Me too. Yeah.
Like, because I've seen some insane examples where you're able to like give it like a geographic, like a map, and it's able to give you a picture of what it would look like, and it looks just like
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, like New York or San Fran. I'm just like, that's insane.
Yeah, like point the arrow here,
right?
And then,
like
I saw that.
I'm like, that's actually pretty impressive, and especially the character consistency. That's especially what I'm tackling, because you're going through Twitter and you're seeing like a lot of these product based images, like the product, like capturing like one product and putting it in an image that it's never been before, and capturing it like one for one is so clean, and it's very good at doing it. So I just want to just take a weekend.
Yeah, I want a project for that's like video or image based to really start playing with it.
Yes. How you were talking about Agent OS's different layout design before? You're talking about like task specs, and then the standards that you have, the different standards. Did that come about from your experience, or is that something that you've noticed from your own projects?
Yeah, I think it started with my experience, like just wanting to give it more context, meaning like more background on what we're building here, and also like any developer, I'm very particular with how I want the code to be written. And I found was that like I was constantly correcting it on stuff, not that it was like broken, but it just didn't write code the way that I would write it. In my style, in my formatting, in the way that I apply Tailwind CSS, or in the way that I design or architect certain things. Like I wanted to, and I found myself over and over making the same corrections over and over. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to just have my standards baked in so that it just always knows how I like to build things. And like you could use like Claude MD for that. But then you're just loading up the context with all this extra information. And I mean, I have like a lot of like when it comes to CSS or when it comes to JavaScript or when it comes to Ruby or when it comes like there's all these different standards that I need to keep track of. So that was the first part of it. And then the idea of spec-driven development was the other driver, right? I started to really learn about like, instead of just throwing all these prompts into it, like it should really follow a larger task list and a bigger spec. That's the more professional way to build, especially when we're building really large features. So having a system for generating these specs off of my like raw notes is sort of a key component to it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. The moment you said like you just kept repeating yourself, I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. Like, yeah, it's crazy, man. Like at the start, you'd have to keep telling it, oh, this is where the virtual environment is. Oh, perhaps not. Right, another README file.
Yeah, and also like since creating specs is such a big part of it, the process of creating a good spec for a big feature, it's not just like it needs to technically do these functionalities. It still needs the context of like, all right, but this fits into a larger product. What's the product for? Who's the target customer for this product? What are they trying to use it for? What's the roadmap? What have we built before already? So it needs all that background context in order to write a good spec. And so that's where we get into this like layered approach where it's like it has your standards for how you build stuff in general. Then it has the product level, like this is the roadmap, this is the mission of the whole product, the target customer. And then we get into the specs. And when it writes the specs, it can take all that background into account, you know?
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's huge. I love that. I'm gonna start implementing more of that last part that you said there in terms of like who the ISP is and like what we're doing. I don't include that in my prompts actually, admittedly. I'm gonna start doing that more frequently. Thank you so much for that, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's key.
Yeah,
it's all about who are we building this for?
Yeah,
you know,
every single time, man. So, is there anything else you'd like to take away, just share with us right before we wrap up on this one?
No, I mean this is just fun to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know when this is going out, but I am doing a live workshop on September 16th, and I'm planning to do these on like a monthly-ish basis. That's through buildermethods.com, and I'm also sending a weekly newsletter through there. So and of course the YouTube channel.
Yeah, the YouTube channel.
That's what I'm working on these days. Yeah.
I'm gonna have you send me links to all of those, and they will be available in the description below, people. Or cool. Wherever you guys hear this on. Hey, Brian, thank you so much for coming through and talking about Claude Code, how you're leveraging it, what it means for the future. And just thank you so much for just coming through, man.
Yeah, Jonathan, thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Yes, man. Thank you so much.